You always look back on it, okay, I can do this. That week.
It's okay. Oh, I'm like, how did she get away? Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Believe it or not, it's like 1:15. It just feels like everybody just got here and we all want to like talk, which is a good sign. But we're going to start our service this morning.
Which is why we say we start at 10:30, but we really don't.
Somebody to do the.
Somebody has to click. Who wants to be the clicker?
Yeah. You just press the arrow.
Mom, pick a comfy seat. Pick a comfy seat, Mom. There's a bench. You want to sit on the bench, Mom? There you go.
I'll get bench.
Yeah, a bencher.
I never got this.
Speaking of Mom, Mom is 81 years old today.
Now you expect me to sit?
I think you upset her. I think she thought she was 80, so you had
Yeah.
That's all right, she's not. Anyway, we're going to start by singing some Christmas music this morning. And even in rehearsal, I realized, and I've been saying this for years, and I could see it coming, but a lot of the Christmas carols, hymns, people don't even know them anymore. Like even us rehearsing them this morning, it's like, oh, how does that go? Because it's been a long time. And I just hate to see that happen. So we're gonna try to use those old Christmas songs this morning and through the Christmas season because I think they're important.
In reply, echoing
because I like made a huge mistake there, so. He knows because he was here for rehearsal. That's okay. And this is one of my,
Still love you.
oh, good. This is one of my favorite Christmas hymns. What Child Is This? It's beautiful, and so we're going to sing that.
Child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch our keeping. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him, Lord, the babe, the Son of Mary. In such meanness here, where rocks and glass are feeding, would Christians fear for sinners here? The silent word is pleading. Nail spears shall pierce him through, the cross be born for me, for you. Hail, hail the Word made flesh, the babe, the
help yourself to coffee out here. There's a box of Joe, and there's more
Box
coming.
of Joe was empty, but there's lots of food.
Well, there's 2 more boxes coming. They're on their way, so as soon as Tim gets here.
I was gonna say, it's been one of those mornings. Little
It's okay.
things happen. Our coffee pot broke. That started it. No, it's not your fault. I did not say that.
Now steal his phrase. 'Tis the season.
But it's all good. We all make do. Well, I'm yakking. Next week, Glenn and I are actually away. So if there's anybody who would like to come and help set up, the praise team set up for me this morning, so thank you. But if there's somebody who would like to come set up and just see the coffee and all that kind of stuff, that'd be great. Just talk with me after. And the kids are going to get to go with me now if they want to go. Any kids, any age, I'll take them all.
Sounds good. So the kids are heading off and doing something different
They already are.
with Laurie over at the house. And Laurie, thank you for doing that. And by kids, I mean, you know, kids-ish. I know some of you are kids at heart. It's not really you, but if you want to go ahead. We're glad you're here this morning. And we're heading into the Christmas season. We talked about that last week. And I had been talking previously a little bit about the fact that Jesus came and he started to talk about himself as Messiah, but in a way that the people at the time he was speaking to didn't understand. And last week when I spoke about the fact that he said, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, and that was one of those moments in time where when he said that, the people really must have looked at him strange. And as a matter of fact, many of the people that were around him, what did they do when they heard that? When he said, you must eat my flesh and drink my blood, they looked at him and said, okay, you're nuts, we're out of here. But then he looked at the rest of them, and this was so key. He said, what are you guys going to do? What do you think of all this? And they kind of said, well, we don't really understand it. They kind of alluded to the fact that we don't get it all, what you're talking about. But what did they say ultimately? But where else could we go? Because you are the one from God that came into the world to give us what? To give us hope, to give us life. And they're like, where else could we find it? And why did they say that? Because they knew who he was. That is so key. And heading into Christmas, I think the same question is pertinent today. If Jesus came into this place, would we recognize him? Would we know him, not physically, but would we know him? Would we know his heart? Would we see him? I remember there was a time where I was at a church and I was doing the youth pastor thing at the church, and I started to play guitar at one of the local bars. And when I would go in there, I'd go with my brother and I would play, you know, some Neil Young, some different stuff, and stuff that we even play here, a little bit of crossover music. And then there were a couple songs where I actually played Christian songs that sound a lot like contemporary, that really, you know, beautiful songs. Some that you've heard here before, When It's All Been Said, When It's All Been Done, some of those songs. And I'd play that in the bar. And some people would come up and say, it was a beautiful song, I loved it. Some would say, why are you playing that crap in the bar? And guess what? I got it. You know, that's kind of their sanctuary and their way to get away and everything. And I said, yeah, I appreciate that. But we would have a conversation around that, wouldn't we? Even though they would come up to complain, eventually I wasn't like, well, you should listen, you know, you should know God, and we'd have a conversation. And the next thing you know, we're talking about Christ in the local bar. Happens to me often. I have church bar wherever I go. I went to get some Chinese the other day, and sure enough, ended up talking with these people. I was talking to this girl, and next thing you know, we're talking about Christ. And then her friends, huge guys, are standing there. I'm like, oh, I hope I don't offend these guys. No, they got into it, and then, oh my gosh, and next thing you know, we had church at the bar. And I thanked the lady that owned it. Thanks for letting me have church at your bar. And she just smiled and was like, okay. But when I went into the bar to play, back to my story originally, I get lost, don't I, on occasion? You guys follow me? No, you know. That's all right. I have fun. I don't know if you know. So anyway, that's right, back on point. What was the point? So I go into the bar with my brother and I'm playing, and all of a sudden the people at the church said, "Hey, you can't play at that bar anymore." I said, "Why not?" They said, "Because the kids know you're playing there, and that's a bad place." And I said, "I know the kids know I'm playing there." I said, "But they also know why I'm playing there. Because if I go into that place, I can get into the lives and be a part of people's lives that wouldn't come to church." Where would Jesus be if he were here? It was funny because when they would look at Jesus, they said, not only do you hang out with those sinners, you eat with them. You become a part of their lives. You do things with them that makes them feel like they're okay. If Jesus did it, why wouldn't we? On a side note, my brother, who was not going to church at the time, who I went to play at the bar with, he came and sang with us one Christmas. I think it was a Christmas. And he came and sang because we as a family wanted to do something. So he came in and sang. And at the end of that, it was Brother John. At the end of that time, he said, "Hey, the bar said I can't sing at their place anymore." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "They heard I sang at church." Not a true story. I mean, it's a true story, but do you get his point? They would never do that. But here the church is pointing the finger, and it's like, who is Jesus? Who would he hang out with? What would he do? And so as we looked at who Jesus is the last few weeks, I want to look at it again because I still think that question is pertinent. Who is he? What would he do? Who would he be with? How would he approach the world if he were here? And so one of the places that, coming into Christmas, I believe that we look quite often is Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. And if you know this verse, I'm sure you do, you've heard it. It says, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on forever. We've heard that verse before, right? And as I spoke, when Jesus was speaking to the people, quite often they saw him as Messiah. We said that passage in John chapter 6 was speaking mainly to who at the time? Who did we say it was? The last couple of weeks I talked about it. He was talking to the Jewish nation, right? He was talking to the people of the Jewish nation, and we saw that in all the verbiage, all the things he talked about. We could tell he was talking to the Jewish nation. Does that mean it's not for us at all? It's carryover. We have things we can learn from that. But if you understand it from what he's talking about, you've got to look at what he was talking about and saying, I'm here as your Messiah, the Jewish nation. And so as we look at this, when we hear this verbiage, who is he speaking to? We know without a doubt, right? Because this is the Old Testament. And so we know that he's speaking to, and in and amongst this passage, it's not Jesus speaking, obviously, but he's being spoken about. And it says, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. That part, even those people in John understood. They got that part about Jesus. Oh, hey, here's that guy that the Old Testament talked about. Here's that guy that said he's going to come into the world, and he's going to take over the world in such a way that we will have what? We will have what God promised us. He will be in charge of the government, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, and he'll have peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne. They got all that part, didn't they? The Jewish people got all that part. That's who he's going to be. He's going to be on the throne. He's going to bring peace into the world. We're going to finally have what we want. But they did what a lot of people do today. They pick and choose the parts of him that they want to believe and understand, and they take the rest of it and they discard it. Because what they skipped over when I just read that was, I said that he was, a child is born, a son is given. They believe that, yep, he's the one for us. And the government will be on his shoulders. Yes, he's going to come and he's going to rule and all the peace and everything, but they skipped this part. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. if they read those verses, if they saw those verses, could they deny in any way, shape, or form? I feel like I'm missing a conversation here. Didn't mean to interrupt. No. Bad. If they read those verses, there's no way that they would be able to deny that Messiah was going to be what? God in the flesh. That God was going to come here to earth, that He was going to be amongst us. He was going to be all these other things as well. And so, when He came into the world and they didn't acknowledge those parts of who He was, that He was God in the flesh. As a matter of fact, most of the people did what when they heard that? Most of the Jewish nation did what when He claimed to be God? What did they want to do? They wanted to stone Him. For you kids, that's not the thing you're thinking of. That means throw rocks at Him. Okay, just getting on to that. They wanted to kill Him. Because they said, you're claiming to be God? Go back to your own scriptures. Look at Isaiah. Look at these passages that you've studied for years. Now, I will say within this that if we read the entire passage, it was not as easy for them to understand as we understand it. Just like the other week when I talked about the fact that Jesus started saying, you got to drink my blood and eat my flesh, and people are like, whoa, dude, party foul. Everybody's like, you know, not cool. You can't talk about that stuff. People think you're weird. The people at the time should have thought He was sounding weird, shouldn't they have? Wouldn't we have thought the same thing? I hope so. And yet, in the end, they said, but we know who you are, and what other choice do we have? We need you. And they understood it to be true. The people that understood this passage, listen to the passage because it starts as a prophetic aspect. It says, nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, He humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future He will honor Galilee for the Gentiles by the way of sea along the Jordan. And then He goes into this prophecy. The people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased the joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest. As men rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of the Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of the oppressor. This does sound a lot like, hey, He's going to take a people that are suffering under other people. He's going to free them. Isn't that perfectly what the Jewish people at the time would have been looking at? They were being held down by who? The Roman government. And they were being held down and made to do things, and they weren't even seen really as a people of any worth at all. Matter of fact, if a Roman citizen looked at a Jewish person and said, hey, take my bags, how far did that person have to take their bags? They had to take them a mile. That's where the phrase, anybody guess? Go the extra mile? Because what Jesus said was, hey, take the whole way for them. Yeah, you have to do it. If a Roman citizen asked you to take their bag, you have to go 1 mile for them. I always wondered how they figured out how long a mile was. Did they have markers or something? But anyway, you had to go 1 mile for them. That was the law. You couldn't deny that. They said, pick up my bags and take them. You had to take them. Jesus said, go the extra mile. Again, another side note. So the rod of the oppressor. Listen to the next phrase. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning. Anybody know that was the phrase that came just before "For to us a child is born"?
No.
Right? Right. You don't think of it because we don't talk about that part. There was a whole part before this prophecy, this part that we pick out, that really spoke to the nation and said a lot of things about, being oppressed and being, in battle, and these garments rolled in blood will be destined for burning. There will be fuel for the fire. I mean, just crazy stuff. And then, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given. And understanding within the context of this whole thing to be able to pull that out and say, that's Jesus. It's easy for us because what? We're seeing it from the other side. We're seeing it from this side and from history and from having all sorts of people tell us that's what it is. And so we can look at this and understand it. But as we look at this and as we see who he is, do we truly understand all of who Christ is and what it means for us in our lives? That's the question we have to ask. We can see him as, a good prophet, which is again what we saw in John with those people that left. Oh, he's a good prophet. He was a smart guy. He was from God. He was kind of had this going on. Have you ever heard people say, well, he's a way to get to heaven? Or that he has some answers. He had a lot of good things. There are so many religions that want to do what? Put him as part of what they do, but not as the whole package. And so as we come to Christmas, the question we have to ask is, what do we believe? What do we understand is true? Did Jesus die for the sins of the world? Did he take away those sins? Did he pay the full price so that if you believed, you could have his record as yours? And yours would be taken by him and paid for. Total forgiveness? Or is it just a part of that? Is there a part that we have to do on top of it? Jesus did that, but we've got to do something. Well, what do we have to do? If we have to do something, what do we have to do? And why do we have to do it? You see, the aspect of understanding who Jesus is goes well beyond saying, oh yeah, he was God in the flesh, came and died, da-da-da. Because the way we respond to that tells us what we really believe about it, doesn't it? If we feel we have to do something other than believe, other than accept that truth as saying, this is my only hope, this is what I'm holding on to. Kind of like that life vest, I'm not letting it go because it's my only hope. If Jesus dying on that cross and paying for my sins is my only hope, what else am I going to reach out for? Why am I going to let go of that safety net, that life jacket in a storm to start reaching for other things? Well, because it's not quite enough. I've got to get this part too. Because wouldn't it be crazy in a crazy storm? You don't have the vest on, you're just holding it, and then you start to let it go and just hold it with one arm. Would you do that? Not if you thought this was all you needed. But if you thought, ooh, I need something else, you might let go and just have the one arm. And so the question is, who do you believe Jesus is? And what is that truth to us? I'll kind of cover the picture and everything. This is a book that I got at one point from someone. And the name of the book, Come Follow Jesus. And then in quotes, parentheses, The Real Jesus. As soon as I saw it, I was like, okay. Let's take a look at the titles of the chapters. It's the first thing I do when I see a book like this. Because I'm like, that'll tell us a lot. Jesus said, come follow me. Okay, good. How can you follow Jesus? Start to look at that one. But I'm a sinful person, not fit to be a follower of Jesus. Interesting. As I kept going through the different chapters, one of them said, if you believe, you must deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. Jesus said that, right? But what does that mean? To whom is he speaking? If Jesus requires of us that somehow we jump into a role where we start to say, well, I must make him Lord. I must follow him in the things that he's taught. If that is the requirement, then the question is, who is Jesus and what is he doing to save us? Now, why do I say that? Because as soon as we have to do something, As soon as we have to become the better person as a result of our relationship with Jesus, and I didn't say that we become because he makes us, but as soon as we have to become. Do you see the difference? As soon as it's something we must do, we're taking an arm off that vest and saying, well, certainly I must be doing something. Let me take my hand off the vest. It's not all about the vest, it's about this and something else. Something I must insert, something I must do. Because Jesus didn't do it all for me somehow. Jesus only did part of it. And he's asking me to do the rest. And that's not the way it is. If we understand Jesus for who he is, we understand that he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me. And the things you know. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. If you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. It's been about 500 years since God used a Roman Catholic monk named Martin Luther to turn the oppressive religious establishment of his day upside down. Historians refer to this as simply the Reformation. It is high time for another one. For too long, Christianity has been identified with political ideology, social agendas, moralistic activism, and other earthly things. The core of Christianity, the gospel message, has been obscured and in some places lost. The church is in trouble because it has embraced the same pressure cooker we find everywhere else. In recent years, a handful of popular books have been published urging a more robust and radical expression of the Christian faith. The unintended consequences of this push is that Christianity becomes more about the sacrifices we make than the sacrifice Jesus made for us. My fear is that too many people, both inside and outside the church, have heard our do more, try harder sermons. I like to call them Christian... anyway, I won't go there. Try harder sermons, and the pleas that have therefore concluded that the focus of the Christian faith is people behaving better. Do you ever get that kind of feel out of some of the sermons you've heard? The fact is that the foundation of Christianity is not about good people getting better. It is good news for bad people coping with their failure to be good. Love that one. The heart of the Christian faith is good news, not good behavior, not good technique, or good advice. This message desperately needs to be recovered in the 21st century. The church should be the one place in all of society where the weary and the heavy laden should be able to come and find rest. Not work, rest. But all too often they get the to-do list, the added to and never-ending to-do list in order to be what you should be. This needs to change. We need a new reformation. The grace of God does not play it safe and cannot be contained by the walls we build and the masks we wear. Grace moves beyond deserving, pushing the envelope of forgiveness and dispersing the shadows of shame and guilt. God does not flinch from reality. Our hopes and our dreams, our hurts and our disappointments, our proudest moments, or our embarrassing failures. This is the inexhaustible message that needs to be recovered in our exhausted age of doing more and trying harder. When I speak of the gospel, when I speak of Jesus, who he was and why he came, he is God in the flesh, come into this world to be one of us. And that's why I mentioned the other week when Mary, her egg is what gave him his body. Why is that so important? Because he was truly one of us. He wasn't some body made on the side and tossed in the world and God lived in it. He had our blood coursing through his veins. He had humanity fully and completely as part of who he was because Mary gave him that. But he didn't have the sin nature. Why? Sin nature is passed on through whom? The Father. And his Father was God. Caused that body to come into the world. So here is this perfect one, born as one of us, to come into the world and live a perfect life. For what purpose? To then give that life so that we could have his perfect record. Period. Anything on top of that is beautiful things that God wants to do in our lives. He does want us to add to these things what? Patience, kindness, peace, love. All those things are great. But never, ever think that that's the stuff you need to add in order to be a believer. A believer believes that I am completely and fully forgiven in the person of Christ. In this baby that was given. For to us a child was given, to us a son was born. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be Prince of Peace. Everlasting Father. That is the true message of Christmas. As we head into that this season, and we go to all the parties, and we talk to all the different people, we have opportunity to share, what is it that we'll share? That simple message. Who's Jesus to you? And that is the key, I swear, to having people come to the place where they say, oh, that doesn't sound like something I would want to walk away from. The many things that we add and the things that the church maybe has become in some ways is what people go, ooh, well, I don't know about that. I think I'd rather go hang out in the bar. They don't kick me out. They don't tell me what I have to do. They love me for who I am and everything I bring. And that is what Jesus would do if he were here. I don't think, I mean, hopefully he'd be here on Sunday morning hang out with us. Hopefully. I think he would. But hopefully we'd see him at the bar later on too. Or maybe at, sporting event or whatever it is that people do. And why would he be there? Part to have fun, to be a part of people's lives, to laugh, to enjoy life, and ultimately to bring a message that said, I love you, just where you are. Broken, hurting, struggling. I want more for you, but I love you just where you are. Do you see that you need me? And this is the final key to this whole thing. Do you see that you need me? Well, what do you mean? The perfection I bring, you can't get anywhere else. Do you understand you need that perfection? Do you understand you need that forgiveness? Because heaven won't let anything that's broken into its gates. Right? Anything broken or distorted or, and how many of us could say, well, I'm not broken or distorted in any way? If you say that, we can get you a mirror, we can try and get you friends, but we need you to understand it's not true. We're all broken. We're all distorted. None of us are perfect. And the one that came into the world who was perfect said, I came here for a reason, so I can make you right with my Father. That's Christmas. That's what it's all about. As we close, I just want to pray and ask God to bless our lives this week in a way that we just continue to remember who he is and why we are who we are. Because of him. Because of his love. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time of year where we can come and remember Christmas and what it really is all about. That God became flesh and blood because he needed to be one of us, to live that perfect life, and then to exchange his perfect life for our broken one. To give us that key, to give us that complete complete forgiveness in God's sight so that we, as we stand before God, are seen as his holy and righteous children. Outside of that, we'd be lost. Father, because of that truth, you have so much more for us, and we look for it. We love it. We ask you to bring those beautiful things into our lives, but even as we fail at them, we stand understanding who we are because of you, not because of what we do. And Father, that is the greatest gift we could ever imagine. And that's the gift we need to share this Christmas so that others can hear that truth and say, that I like. That I want. Father, help us to just do it in such a natural way, not depending on ourselves, but letting you work through our hearts and lives. And as we do, Father, we'll thank you for all that you do in Christ's name. I guess we're going to close with a song. Another Christmas song.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
We might have that on the books here.
that night brought perfection into a broken world. And that perfection is our only hope. Share that hope with the world. God bless. Before we leave, I think we should probably sing Happy Birthday.
Oh, stop making a face. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear mommy. Doc. Happy birthday to you.
Give a hug on the way.